Guys, I'm Sage Valentine, and let's get down to this review of CBS's Survivor. Season 31 is pretty much the double episode. It's supposedly episode 10, but it was like a double episode. Okay, so I'm sure some of you guys are wondering, why did Sierra go home? And why did Steven go home? My theory on Sierra is something that I've been repeating over and over in my reviews, but I'll repeat it for those of you who are just watching my reviews for the first time. Sierra ran her mouth too much, and she thought that she was running the show. She would come up with this idea, particularly in this episode, when she came up with the idea to backdoor Steven and ask the people, Tasha, Joe, Abby, and Spencer, to go along with backdooring him, and just the 5 of them would do it and make a really big move. The thing was, she couldn't trust those people. She really didn't know them. I mean, she could kind of sort of trust Abby, but Abby's a bit of a wild card, and that's why I like her as a player, because nobody knows what Abby's thinking at all. But I think what really killed her was all those weeks or episodes that showed her basically like running her mouth at tribal council. As I said, like she ran everything. And then she was a part of the witch coven, the 3 witches, whatever you want to call her alliance with Abby and Kelly Wentworth. And suffice it to say, she basically went home because she was basically the next person to go, and her name kept popping up for the past couple weeks. And my weeks, I'm saying as in the weeks that we've been watching this show, and it was her time to go. But if Joe had not won that immunity challenge, Joe was going to be the person going home. And see, that the contestants needed to get a brand new shelter. They had to pick between a white pebble, which meant getting a new shelter, or a black pebble, which meant competing in the immunity challenge. But the crazy thing was that all the strong players chose the white pebble. And then it came down to Joe and Keith having the black pebble. And I was like, Joe and Keith, like, I mean, everyone had been talking for the past few episodes that they wanted to get Joe out, and then you allow Keith to be the person battling against Joe. I knew Joe was going to win that, especially when I saw that he had to balance on a box. I was like, Joe has this. He got this. Like, he's going to win it, and he won it. But I don't know about you guys, but when I was watching Keith seemed to be balanced, and all of a sudden he let go. I've noticed Keith doing that quite a few times. I don't know if he's doing it on purpose, but it looks like he kind of just gives up, and then all of a sudden Joe wins, or this one wins, when if he had held on just a little bit longer, he probably could have won the immunity challenge. I said probably. But I am happy that Joe won, because everybody was so adamant about getting him out. And I respect Joe as a player because of the fact that Joe is a beast when it comes to these competitions. But when it comes down to it, that big alliance that includes Tasha and Spencer and Steven and Jeremy, and I forgot who else, but at this part they excluded Steven. They decided that they had basically everybody pretty much in the tribe decided they had to pick between Sierra and Steven to figure out who was the bigger threat. And Tasha was right when Tasha was just like, they needed to unhinge the crew by taking out Sierra. Meanwhile, other folks wanted to get out Steven. But Jeremy decided at Tribal Council that he was going to throw out his immunity idol to Steven. And I was confused, like, what are you doing, Jeremy? And then I had to remind myself. The reason why Jeremy is keeping Steven in this game is because not only is Steven loyal to him, but he can kind of, I wouldn't say hide behind Steven, but he could kind of have Steven pull him along towards the end. And according to those quote-unquote spoilers, they claim that Jeremy makes it to the end, but I don't know how correct they are. But from the looks of it, Jeremy is definitely one hell of a player. So, at Tribal Council, before Steven or even Sierra or Kimmy's name is even thrown out, Tasha mentions that the choosing of the rocks came down to the selfish and unselfish people. And this did not sit well with Joe. And at this part, I can understand what Joe was saying, because he's just like, if I had chosen the white rock, then my behind would have gone home. And yeah, he's definitely probably would have. But the votes came down to 2 votes for Kimmy, which I was like, why is anybody voting for Kimmy? Like, what has Kimmy done? 3 votes for Sierra, and then 5 votes for Fish, which didn't count, so Sierra basically went home. Can't say I was surprised, though. Like I said, Sierra kind of has it coming, or had it coming. As soon as Cass left, that's when Sierra should have just, like, sat back and started watching what was going on, but she kind of tried to take a leadership role, and she didn't realize that Jeremy and some other folks, I think it's Jeremy and Tasha and I think Steven and Spencer in some ways, are all running the show. She was not at all. So because Jeremy used the idol on Steven, Steven felt like he owed Jeremy. Yeah, he definitely did. After Jeremy used that idol, everybody was freaking out like, oh my God, he has an idol. But no one's wondering whether he has a second idol. So that just proves that Jeremy is fooling the crap out of all these people in this game. And Spencer realizes he wants to jump ship and start a whole new alliance. He's done with Jeremy and this whole big mess. So we get to this whole competition called Survivor Folklore. And it's something that is kind of a competition that was done quite a few times previously. But the fact that they're bringing it back during this episode of this season is pretty awesome. And basically, the players had to answer questions and put these golden rings on this thing or whatever. And during the competition, Kelly Wentworth came upon an idol clue and held on to that for dear life. But the winner of this was Stephen Fishback. And Stephen decided that he needed to take one person, because they allowed him to take one person with him at first. And he chose Tasha because he wanted to mend fences with Tasha, because he felt like after what happened and she wrote his name down to be evicted maybe a couple episodes prior, he wanted to fix that relationship. Now, Jeremy was surprised. Everybody else was surprised. And then when Jeff Probst said, you know what, Fish, you can take somebody else, he chose Jeremy. Now, this alarmed everybody. Like, oh my God, so obviously Fish and Tasha and Jeremy are in an alliance. Like, what took you guys so long? Like, clearly you could kind of tell. But maybe I'm saying this because I'm at home. Obviously, I'm saying this because I'm at home watching this. So Spencer feels like now he needs to change the game and he needs to separate this big alliance. So Joe said that Steven, by picking Tasha and Jeremy, he put himself out there. So clearly at first it seems like Spencer is probably going to, not Spencer, Steven is probably going to go home. And then, for some reason, Tasha's name is thrown out there, and it's like Steven versus Tasha. And it's pretty funny how towards the end of the episode, on a side note, Tasha's name completely disappeared from the conversation. And some of you guys are probably wondering, well, how the heck did that happen? I really believe that had to do with Spencer. I honestly believe that Spencer and Tasha have this unspoken alliance, like they communicated after the show was over, and I guess they decided if they got picked for this, that they were going to work together, kind of on the outskirts of everything. Everybody wasn't going to know, because every time Tasha's name pops up, watch Spencer's face. Because Spencer kind of goes along like, but he never says like, oh yeah, we got to get her out. He's just like, and then her name just disappears from the convo. And on a side note, did you guys notice how when everyone was just like, we got to get out Steven, we got to get out Tasha, nobody said anything about getting out Jeremy? Like, Jeremy was the dude who had the idol, and he used that idol on Steven, and he fooled everybody to the point whereas they didn't even realize he had an idol. I was sitting there watching during the episode like, what is going on? How do you guys not mention this dude's name? Unless, of course, they mentioned it and that scene wasn't put in the episode because they didn't have enough time during editing and everything, but still. And I thought it was pretty funny when Abby Maria tried to ask Joe to throw the immunity competition to her so that she'd be safe. And I was like, why would Joe throw that competition to you, Abby, and put himself in danger? Because he knows good and well that everybody wants to vote him out because he's such a competition beast. But unfortunately, Joe lost the immunity challenge to Spencer because Spencer has some fancy feet and they had to move these blocks around with their feet, and Spencer was more careful and faster than he was, and suffice it to say, Spencer won. And at first I'm like, oh God, Joe's going home, Joe's gonna go home, and they were going to blindside him. And then all of a sudden the conversation changed and 4 people decided, we gotta blindside Fish, we gotta get him out of this game because he's the one that has that special power given to him by Jeff Probst. And yes, I was biting my nails when Abby said that she wasn't sure who she was going to vote for, and I'm like, oh man, like this could be a perfect blindside if Abby would just go along with what everybody else is doing, but then she was confused and she felt a little bit skeptical, and I'm all for thinking for yourself, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna get her out and I don't want Abby to go yet. And all of a sudden Abby's name popped up and they decided they wanted to get rid of Abby. But then there was a side that decided they wanted to get rid of Steven, and Steven realized that he knew he was in trouble and he was going to go home, possibly. But we made it to tribal council, and Tasha claimed that there was a shift coming in the game, and Fish decided to play his advantage after telling people a little bit about the advantage. But I guess somewhere along the lines, I must have missed the part where he could take that person's vote and then vote 2 times. Like, I figured he could take the vote and then they just couldn't vote. But maybe I was thinking of Big Brother, where they had like this thing where you could take the person's vote, then they couldn't even vote at all, or take a couple people's votes and they couldn't vote at all and you only get 1 vote. But Steven decided to take Joe's vote when, if he was mad at Abby, he probably should have taken Abby's vote. But I digress. And the vote came down to 3 votes for Abby. So Kimmy, Tasha, and Fish voted for Abby. 2 votes for Joe. That was Jeremy and Fish that voted for Joe. And then it was 4 votes for Fish. That was Spencer, Kelly, Abby, and Kimmy. And the players sent Steven straight to jury. But that's about it for this review. You guys take care. Don't forget to rate this video. Check the links below. Leave me some comments. Let me know what you thought about this episode and who you think is going to win and who's the next person to be sent to jury. Also, hit that subscribe button and subscribe to my brand of crazy. I love you guys. Take care. Bye, guys. Until next week. Bye. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye.